Hello everyone, you are watching the Center African TV channel. Welcome to the Diaspora Today show. I'm your host and my name is Abdulrashid Abubakar. This program is intended to showcase and explore African entrepreneurs home and abroad. Most recently, the Center for Global Development reported how 17 countries are leading the way across the African continent. The CGD research stated that there is good news out of Africa. 17 emerging countries are putting behind them the conflict, stagnation, and dictatorship of the past. Most recently, we witnessed this in the Gambia, where a new democratically elected president, His Excellency Adama Barrow, took over from a former military dictator, Yahya Jammeh. Today, we are at the Moroccan American Center, which comprises of three non-for-profit organizations: the Moroccan American Center for Policy, the Moroccan American Trade and Investment, and the Moroccan American Cultural Center. This group of non-for-profit organizations are working together to promote relations and mutual understanding between the United States and Morocco. We are one-on-one here today with one of Africa's brightest, successful, and well-respected in the world. I'm talking about AbiNader, the Executive Director, Moroccan American Trade and Investment Center, an international business advisory. Hello, welcome to the show today.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Can you tell us down memory line how it all started?
That's a really good question because in some ways it's almost a model for how to build good, strong bilateral relationships. In 2003, Mohammed VI, who was the King of Morocco since 1999, when he succeeded his father Hassan II, came to the United States and visited with President George W. Bush. The idea was, how can we build stronger relationships between Morocco, which was the first country to recognize the United States back in 1777, and the United States, which, as you know, is the world's most powerful country. And out of this discussion came the idea of having a free trade agreement between Morocco and the United States. And so the negotiations began, and in 2006, it came into force. What was really interesting about the free trade agreement is that it had a component encouraging Morocco to develop relations with the AGOA countries in terms of exports to the United States. In other words, if the textile industry in Morocco sourced a certain percentage of yarn and cotton and buttons and things like that from the AGOA countries, they could enter the United States duty-free. And so that was the first recognition from the American side that Morocco really was a player in Africa and someone with whom they could work to develop America's presence throughout the continent.
That's fantastic. Then, as an entrepreneur, how are you able to put it, both together, working as a successful entrepreneur and a manager of a non-for-profit organization?
Well, I think the entrepreneur part comes from seeing where there's a need and trying to create solutions for those needs. And so I see myself as a facilitator, and that is building the capabilities of other young, much younger than me in most cases, people in Africa who will say, yes, I want to try something. I have this education, I don't have a lot of experience, but I have good ideas. How do I get into the marketplace? What kind of skills do I need? What kind of tools do I use? And so I've spent a lot of my time enabling young people with great ideas to put them into practice and to become business people. And that's very hard because having a good idea doesn't mean you're a businessman.
True.
And so the hard part is learning bookkeeping and financing and human resources and how to do a business day to day, how to schedule procurements. This is what the hardest part is. And this is what I really focus on, is enabling entrepreneurs to become business people.
That's fantastic. Can you tell us more about Moroccan American Trade and Investment Center?
Yes, it was directly an outgrowth of the Free Trade Agreement. The idea behind the center, and we traveled around the United States and Morocco, trying to advise private sectors in both countries on what the free trade agreement could do for them in terms of exports and in terms of investments.
Okay, that's great. In 2013, King Mohammed of Morocco visited the United States. And during his visit in the United States, he signed a couple of agreements with the United States government. What impact does that have with the Moroccan-American trade and investment?
It really is the latest in a series of steps. So we started with a free trade agreement. Morocco has non-NATO ally status. It has defense cooperation agreements. It collaborates in the global war on terrorism. It works, has special relationships with regard to investments. And so in 2013 was the next logical step is, okay, where do we go? And so a strategic dialogue, the first one in Africa, the first one in the Middle East, was started with Morocco. And a strategic dialogue is an annual visit in either country by senior officials who work in working groups to come up with what can we do better, how can we help each other. And in the US-Morocco strategic dialogue, there's a political working group, an economic working group, an education working group, because education is so important, and a cultural working group.
So, as an investor, if I want to travel to Morocco, what are the potential opportunity and investment for me in Morocco?
That's a big question.
True.
What I like about Morocco, and I mean, you have to understand that I started working in the Arab world in 1976 in Saudi Arabia. And in those days, you couldn't even come within 100 miles of Saudi Arabia unless you had a sponsor, unless you had a special visa from the embassy and all these kinds of things. Morocco's wide open. You go to the airport, you get your visa, you go inside. There are many agencies there that can help you. But the good part is, for example, with our organization, if you want to sell something like you have a special kind of solar battery-powered utensil that can be used in agriculture, you come to us or you come to the embassy, to the commercial office, and you say, I want to take these to Morocco. Who do I talk to? So what we do is we help you find the right contacts. So we help people who have a technology or a product
To establish
good relations in the country. And then it's up to them to make the deal. We don't make the deal for them. For investors, we know what's going on in Morocco. We know what the laws are. We know what the incentives are. We know what the partners are. We know what the banks are doing. And all of this is important information for investors to have. For example, the latest thing where we've been doing a lot of work is on Islamic finance, because Morocco last year, the parliament approved a bill establishing Islamic finance as part of the banking sector. And so the banks had to set up, compliance boards. They had to set up all the sukuk and the other instruments they were going to use. All that had to be approved. And so we had to become smart on that. We had to understand not the Saudi model or the Malaysian model, but what was the Moroccan model going to be. Fortunately, 5 banks in Morocco have formed joint venture with Gulf banks to do Islamic banking in Morocco. So we have a good relationship to build on our expertise in terms of helping people understand, hey, not only do you have conventional investment vehicles here, but you also have Islamic vehicles.
Okay. So now tell me, because earlier on during this interview, you mentioned helping the youths, on setting up, advisory level on how to set up businesses.
Right.
And significantly, this is what I've been, hurting most businesses, startups. Can you, in just few, can you just tell me, as a young entrepreneur, what are the things that I have to put in place that will push me forward to the next level in my startup?
That's a very, very good question, because it brings out 3 important considerations. One is, what is my idea? 2, how am I going to finance the idea and get it into the public sphere? And 3, what is what we call the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the country that will help me? Are there incentives? Do they give me breaks in taxes? Do they have ways like incubators or labs where I can go and learn this with other things? So the biggest boost that we see is for young people to work together because they all have the same issues. They may have different ideas, but working together, facing the same problems, they learn from each other, and that way we can multiply our effect rather than working with one company here, one company here. By working in a laboratory or working in a workshop or working in an incubator, we can help encourage these people to not only have good ideas, but move those ideas into products and services.
Youth out there today ask me this question, and I'm going to ask you, should I quit my job and just be an entrepreneur?
Well, let me clarify something, because I think there's a misunderstanding, mostly caused by the business community, about what an entrepreneur is. An entrepreneur is someone who creates something new, an innovation, something that hasn't been done before. It can be a service like Uber. It can be a digital-based technology or program. But entrepreneurship means innovation, and it means creating something new. Whereas let's say that I'm not creating something new, but I'm doing something better. I'm doing a food product better, or I'm improving the quality of irrigation project, or I have a new technology for using solar power. Those are enterprising. In other words, it's creating a small business because there's a demand and I'm creating a supply. What we have to remember is that the majority of businesses in all of our countries in Africa are the informal sector. So the real challenge from my point of view is how do we enable the informal sector to become small and medium-sized enterprises? Let me say that again in another way. Any country you go to, you'll find people doing automobile repair. You'll find people doing heating and air conditioning. You'll find people doing plumbing and electrical work. None of them have licenses. They're part of the informal economy. And some of them are people doing it for 30 years. So we need to find a way to work with them and say, okay, you've been doing this job for 30 years, you can do electrical work, come in here and demonstrate. You take some tests, demonstration tests, not paper and pencil, and based on that and some other training we give you, because they not only need, sometimes they need literacy training, to be able to read technical documents, not more than just reading and writing, but real technical skills. They need financial literacy, how to do bookkeeping, how to hire people, how to do procurement, how to buy and sell, how to price, okay? And they need training on soft skills. How do I manage people? How do I present my product? So all of those things and certification come together to help improve the quality of the informal economy, which means that they'll then be able to have a license. They can form a business. They can work with other companies to form a co-op or other forms. And what that does is that it generates jobs. For example, in Morocco, we have 70,000 informal companies. This is companies from 1 people to 5, But if every one of those small companies hired 1 person a year, it would eliminate unemployment. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's very important to concentrate on the informal sector, because these are people who already have skills. They already have the attitude that I can do something. I'm working with my hands, I'm working with my brains. And so if we enable them, that for me is much less risky than taking someone out of the university who has no mechanical skills, he has no management skills, and he doesn't want to work with his hands because he's got a university degree, and so, that's culturally I can't do that kind of work. It's better to work with people who are already doing the work and who want to get ahead than it is to try to change sometimes the attitudes of people who think that they should have jobs in the government, as opposed to getting out in the street and finding a job and working hard.
Now, let's move forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The King of Morocco, King Mohammed, has been very, critical and very open when it comes to business cooperation, among other African nations. What do you see to that? What do you have to say about that?
King Mohammed VI is not Muammar Gaddafi, who wanted to be the king of Africa and the king of the Middle East. He is the legitimate descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. There's no doubt about that. His particular family is from the 1600s, so they've been in power for more than 400 years. They're rooted in the Sahrawi southern part of Morocco, which is right off the Sahara. So they really do believe and feel very strongly that their roots are in Africa, and that they see the trunk of the tree is where they are in Morocco, and the branches go out all over the world. This is how I think visually they see their role in the world. And so when he saw, and if you go back when his father was king, his father actually started the movement toward Africa by encouraging Moroccan banks to go into more African countries, by, of course, the non-proliferation movement and the many different, the African Union, the Organization of African Unity at the time, met in Marrakesh. So Morocco has a long time relationship with Africa. And so if you look at the actions of Morocco, you will see that since the late 90s, they have been very, very active in terms of developing business in Africa. And so this was shown to be very wise, because in 2007, 2008, when Europe collapsed in terms of its economy, and Morocco, which does 60% of its business in Europe, was really suffering, it could go into its networks and build on business opportunities it was already using in Africa, the banking system, telecoms, agriculture, education. And that's how Morocco was able to maintain a very respectable growth rate even when Europe was suffering. Another benefit was in 2007, 2008, many French banks had to sell off their assets because they had so many financial difficulties because of the collapse of the financial system in Europe, the Euro collapse. Moroccan banks weren't big enough to buy all that terrible, worthless paper that the French had bought, and so they were able to use their assets to buy up the French banks. And so they have this very high rate of penetration throughout Central and West Africa.
Wow.
And same with the airlines.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
17 countries leading the way in Africa. 17 countries running the show in Africa. Now, Morocco is among these 17 countries.
Of course.
Which is quite interesting. My question to you next is that, what are the things that can really motivate investors to go and invest in Morocco?
That, I think, highlights the steps that Morocco has been taking, not just to attract investments in Morocco, but through Morocco into Africa. First of all, it set up Casablanca Finance City, which has become a hub for private investment firms, for financial services firms, for cargo forwarders. Those kinds of international companies have come to Casablanca and taken advantage of the incentives to set up shop in Casablanca Finance City. From Casablanca Finance City, they can go to any of 35 destinations in Africa. That's Royal Air Morocco, goes to 35 different destinations. And more importantly, in those countries, they will find Moroccans or Moroccan-owned businesses like the banks who can help them identify local partners, projects, and financing. And that's what investors are looking for. Who can I rely on? Who can I talk to? Who can I know has the experience to help me not make mistakes? Because investors are very risk averse. And so the more things you can do to help them understand how to navigate in these different countries, the stronger your services are going to be. And so Morocco is doing this. Morocco is already strong, obviously, in Central and West Africa, Francophone Africa. But it also has good relations in Ghana, it has good relations in Sierra Leone. It's developing, as you know, very close relations with...
That is the reason why Morocco will join the ECOWAS?
Well, I think Morocco has been an observer for ECOWAS for a long time, and now they've applied for membership. The major obstacle is they're not part of West Africa. But anymore, we know that these divisions, geographic divisions, don't make sense in terms of how business is conducted. Business is transnational. And so...
I'm critically thinking, how can that positively impact Morocco economy?
Well, Morocco, if Morocco joins ECOWAS, first of all, they get access to more countries to do business and to find more partners. Secondly, it has the ability to then bring those investors to Morocco. Because if I have hotels, for example, in Accra, and I'm looking for opportunities in other places, Morocco is a network of banks, of service firms, of infrastructure building organizations that can help me in other African countries and in Morocco. And so that's important. I mean, one of the good things about the free trade agreement is that if a producer sells or makes a partnership with Moroccan companies, and Morocco adds 35% of its value to the product that comes to the United States duty-free. So there are a lot of opportunities for doing business in Morocco beyond investments, in trade as well, exports. And there's no, I think Morocco has, Morocco's like Lebanon in some ways. Countries that are on the sea or countries that rely on international business have big coasts, and so they're always dealing with other countries and other nationalities. They understand business, and they understand what it takes to do business. And that's why in Africa, if you go down the coast, those are the people who do the business, of course. Who's going to be doing the trade but the people on the coast, and they do the business into the interior. And so I think what we're seeing now is a maturity. There's a growing maturity in how businesses see themselves. Moving away from buying and selling, mercantilism, to being productive, to creating jobs that have much higher value. Africa has to go that way. It has to go that way. It's going to be what? 1 billion people? 2 billion people by 2050? By 2050, yeah, they're going to have 2 billion people. Someone's got to feed them and clothe them and all those things.
Right now, Morocco is not the biggest economy in Africa.
It's only 33 million people.
It's only 33 million people. So do you think Morocco can lead the way, for these very great ideas that is coming?
What's the most successful country in Africa in terms of doing business? It's Mauritius. Mauritius is a very small country, but they do exports. They have really strong trade relations. They do textiles. In other words, your size does not make you, and look at South Africa or look at Nigeria. One can say that it's much tougher to do business, and it is tougher to do business in South Africa and Nigeria than it is in Ghana or Morocco. So why don't we encourage people, these smaller countries, to be models for how business can be done in other places? So, Morocco's not trying to be Nigeria or South Africa, but it's trying to be a gateway. It's a small domestic market. If I'm a business person in Europe and in the United States, I look at Morocco, I say 33 million people, which means you probably only have 4 to 5 million upper middle class consumers who can afford my product. But if I look at Morocco as a gateway, then I'm looking at 50, 60 million customers. It's a big, big difference.
As an international business consultant, I'm trying to do a lot of investment. What will be your advice to me? What are the things you want me to look into as a consultant?
See, I'm a little biased in that way, in that you can build hotels and resorts, service jobs. You can build textile mills. Very low entry, very low cost in terms of human resources. And they create lots of jobs, but they're low paying jobs. I'm more interested in trying to promote those kinds of businesses, investments that will create jobs where I can support a family of 4, where I can send my children to school, where I can have a car and my kids can have a car. In other words, push people into the middle class. And the only way to do that is by creating more high-value jobs, manufacturing jobs, industrial-based jobs, high-end services jobs. Technology the digital revolution is coming to Africa. It's already mobile banking, look in East Africa. It's now coming to West Africa. Morocco's finally doing it in Morocco. So I think there are new opportunities on the horizon that are going to change the way we see labor. We're always going to have some jobs that are done by people. But more and more, and we're facing this in the United States, the amount of jobs being replaced by robotics and automation is shrinking the industrial workforce, and there's nothing we can do about it.
I hope you'll enjoy our discussion today.
I know people keep on telling me there's nothing like a miracle if you try in this circle of life. But I am an example. I know that you can make it in this life if only you try. So stand up and pick up your chest. Don't let nobody tell you make you settle for less. Whenever you afraid, just hold my head. Shop, shop, show, make we holler, let it go. Oh, you come, make we go. Make we go to all the places where we talk, so we would like to go before. Make we go, make we see. What you let them do for real, make we feel, make we check on them. Not two of them, they use we go know. But now after we go know. Better not truth, better not lie, them we glow. Oh, you come, make we go, go, go. Oh, you come, make we go. Oh, you come, make we go. Make we go to all the places where we talk, so we would like to go before. Make we go, make we see. What you let them do for real, make we feel, make we check on them. Not two of them, they use we go know. That's how we learn something. We go know if not true or not like